Seacliff Cove, with its sprawling oceanfront mansions and manicured lawns, had always been a haven for the wealthy elite. Among its most prominent residents was Evelyn Blackwood, a striking woman in her early 50s, whose grace and poise belied the weight of grief she carried. It had been 2 years since the passing of her husband, Robert Blackwood, a real estate tycoon whose shrewd investments had built an empire. On a warm spring morning in 2023, Evelyn stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her modernist villa, overlooking the vast expanse of her meticulously landscaped garden. Her gaze fell upon a figure moving among the rose bushes. Derek Reeves, the new landscaper she had hired on the recommendation of her country club friends. At 34, Derek cut an impressive figure. His sun-kissed skin and well-defined muscles spoke of a life spent working outdoors. As he looked up and caught Evelyn's eye, he flashed a disarming smile that sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Evelyn had not felt such a stirring in years. Since Robert's death, she had thrown herself into managing his philanthropic foundation, filling her days with board meetings and charity galas. But the nights were long and lonely, the silence of the house a constant reminder of her loss. That afternoon, as Derek was finishing up for the day, Evelyn found herself wandering into the garden. She approached him, ostensibly to discuss the plans for the new water feature, but she found herself lingering, drawn into conversation about his background and aspirations. Derek spoke of his dreams to start his own landscape design business, his eyes lighting up as he described his vision. Evelyn found herself captivated, not just by his passion, but by the way he made her feel seen and heard in a way she hadn't experienced in years. As the weeks passed, Evelyn found more and more reasons to be in the garden when Derek was working. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. She learned of his struggles growing up in a working-class family, his determination to build a better life for himself. In turn, she shared stories of her own journey, the challenges of being a woman in the male-dominated world of high society. One evening, as the sun was setting over the ocean, casting a golden glow across the garden, Derek and Evelyn found themselves standing closer than usual. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Before she could second-guess herself, Evelyn leaned in and kissed him. The kiss was electric, awakening feelings in Evelyn she thought had long since died with her husband. Derek responded with equal fervor, his strong arms encircling her waist. As they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Evelyn knew that her life was about to change irrevocably. What started as a kiss quickly blossomed into a full-blown affair. Evelyn found herself sneaking Derek into the house after dark, their passionate encounters leaving her feeling more alive than she had in years. She lavished him with expensive gifts, a designer watch, a new truck for his business, justifying it to herself as supporting his dreams. Derek, for his part, seemed equally enamored. He showered Evelyn with attention, making her feel desirable and vibrant. When he spoke of his plans for the future, he now included her in them, painting a picture of a life they could build together. But as spring turned to summer, the first cracks in their idyllic affair began to show. Evelyn's children, Alexander and Sophia, both in their late 20s, started to notice changes in their mother. The designer clothes, the new hairstyle, the spring in her step, all signs that didn't go unnoticed. Alexander, the elder of the two siblings and a rising star in his father's company, was the first to voice his concerns. During a Sunday brunch at Evelyn's home, he casually mentioned noticing her new landscaper's truck parked on their street late at night. Evelyn felt her heart race as she fabricated a story about Derek working overtime to finish a project. Sophia, always more perceptive than her brother, watched her mother's reaction with narrowed eyes. She had noticed the way Evelyn's phone buzzed more frequently, the secretive smiles when she read her messages. While part of her was happy to see her mother emerging from the fog of grief, another part worried about the potential consequences of what she suspected was happening. As the siblings left that day, they exchanged meaningful glances. Alexander told Sophia, "Something's not right here. Mom's acting like a teenager with a crush." Sophia nodded in agreement, her mind already working on how to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Derek's relationship intensified. They began taking risks, meeting at upscale restaurants in neighboring towns, stealing kisses in hidden corners of Evelyn's expansive property. Evelyn felt drunk on the excitement of it all, the thrill of their forbidden romance, making her feel decades younger. One balmy evening in July, as they lay tangled in the sheets of Evelyn's king-sized bed, Derek broached a subject that would alter the course of their relationship. He spoke of his dreams again, but this time with more urgency. He told Evelyn about a prime piece of commercial real estate that had come on the market, the perfect location for the high-end nursery and landscape design center he had always envisioned. Evelyn listened, her heart swelling with pride at his ambition. But then came the request that would set in motion a chain of events neither of them could have foreseen. Derek asked Evelyn for a loan, a substantial one, to secure the property and start his business. "With your help, my love, I could make this dream a reality," Derek said, his eyes shining with hope and something else Evelyn couldn't quite identify. "We could build something beautiful together." Evelyn hesitated. It was a significant amount of money, more than she had ever considered gifting to anyone outside her family. But as she looked into Derek's earnest face, she found herself nodding. "Of course, darling. Anything for you." The next day, Evelyn visited her bank and arranged for the transfer of funds. She told herself it was an investment in their future together, ignoring the nagging voice in the back of her mind that whispered of caution. As weeks passed, Derek's demeanor began to change subtly. He became more distracted, often checking his phone during their time together. His visits became less frequent, always accompanied by plausible excuses about the demands of setting up his new business. Evelyn tried to push aside her growing unease, focusing instead on the moments of passion they still shared. She threw herself into helping Derek, using her connections to introduce him to potential high-end clients, even commissioning an expensive website for his new venture. But the cracks in their relationship were widening. Evelyn found herself making more and more excuses for Derek's absences to her increasingly suspicious children. Alexander, in particular, had started asking pointed questions about her financial decisions, having noticed unusual activity in the family accounts he helped manage. One evening, as Evelyn sat alone in her garden, nursing a glass of wine and waiting for Derek to arrive for a dinner date he was now an hour late for, she received a call from Sophia. Her daughter's voice was tight with concern as she said, "Mom, there's something you need to know about Derek. I've been doing some digging and, well, I think you should come over. There's something you need to see." Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. As she hung up the phone, her eyes fell on a withered rose bush, one that Derek had planted with such care just months ago. It seemed a fitting metaphor for the doubts that were now blooming in her heart. With a heavy sigh, Evelyn stood, smoothing down her designer dress. As she walked towards her car, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window, a woman torn between the intoxicating allure of new love and the sobering reality of potential betrayal. Little did she know the revelations awaiting her at Sophia's house would shatter the illusion of her romance with Derek, setting in motion a series of events that would end in tragedy. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the steering wheel, navigating the winding coastal road to Sophia's modest but chic apartment. The sun was setting over the ocean, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the growing darkness in Evelyn's heart. Upon arriving, she found not only Sophia, but also Alexander waiting for her, their faces grave. Sophia gestured for her mother to sit down, then placed a laptop in front of her. "Mom," she began gently, "we've been worried about you. We hired a private investigator to look into Derek's background." What Evelyn saw next made her blood run cold. The screen displayed a series of documents and photographs that painted a very different picture of the man she thought she knew. Derek Reeves, it turned out, was not just an ambitious landscaper with dreams of starting his own business. He was a con artist with a string of wealthy, older victims across 3 states. Alexander, his voice tight with barely contained anger, explained, He's done this before, Mom, multiple times. He seduces wealthy widows, convinces them to invest in his business ventures, and then disappears with the money. Evelyn felt the room spin as she scrolled through the evidence. There were police reports, newspaper articles about other women who had fallen prey to Derek's charms, and most damning of all, a recent photograph of Derek with his arm around a young, beautiful woman tagged on social media as his fiancée. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Sophia said softly, placing a comforting hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "We should have told you our suspicions sooner." Evelyn sat in stunned silence, her mind reeling. How could she have been so blind? The signs had been there. The constant requests for money, the growing distance, the secretive phone calls. She had ignored them all, too caught up in the intoxication of feeling young and desired again. As the initial shock wore off, a new emotion began to take its place: rage. Evelyn had always prided herself on her strength and independence. The idea that she had been so thoroughly duped, not just emotionally but financially, was almost too much to bear. "How much?" Alexander asked, his voice cutting through Evelyn's thoughts. "What?" she responded, still dazed. "How much money did you give him, Mom?" Evelyn closed her eyes, the full weight of her folly crashing down on her. $2 million, she whispered. The sharp intake of breath from both her children spoke volumes. It was a significant sum, even for someone of Evelyn's wealth. "We need to go to the police," Alexander said firmly. "We have enough evidence here to—" "No," Evelyn cut him off, her voice suddenly steely. "No police. Not yet. I need to confront him myself first." Sophia and Alexander exchanged worried glances. "Mom, that's not a good idea," Sophia pleaded. "He could be dangerous." But Evelyn's mind was made up. The humiliation of being fooled, the betrayal of her trust, the potential damage to her reputation in Seacliff Cove's tight-knit community, it all coalesced into a burning need for confrontation. "I'll be fine," she assured her children, standing up with renewed purpose. "I just need to hear it from him. I need to look him in the eye when he tells me it was all a lie." Despite their protests, Evelyn left Sophia's apartment, her mind racing with plans. She knew Derek was supposed to be working late at the nursery he had purchased with her money. That's where she would find him. As Evelyn drove through the gathering darkness, her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Sorry I missed dinner. Got caught up at the nursery. Rain check?" The casual tone of the message, so at odds with the revelations of the evening, only fueled Evelyn's anger. She pressed down harder on the accelerator, the scenery blurring as she sped towards a confrontation that would change everything. Arriving at the nursery, Evelyn saw Derek's truck parked out front. The lights were on inside the main building. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. As she approached the entrance, she could hear voices, Derek's and a woman's, laughing intimately. Peering through the window, Evelyn saw Derek with his arms around the same young woman from the photograph, his fiancée. Something snapped inside Evelyn. All the pain, humiliation, and rage of the past few hours crystallized into a single, overwhelming impulse. Without fully realizing what she was doing, she reached for a heavy ceramic pot near the door. The next few moments passed in a blur. Evelyn burst into the nursery, the pot raised high. Derek's eyes widened in shock and fear as he saw her. "Evelyn, wait! I can explain!" he cried out. But it was too late. The pot came crashing down, and with it, the last vestiges of Evelyn's carefully constructed world. The sickening thud of ceramic against flesh echoed through the nursery. Derek crumpled to the floor, blood pooling rapidly around his head. His fiancée's scream pierced the air, snapping Evelyn out of her rage-induced trance. Horror washed over Evelyn as the full impact of her actions sank in. She stared at her hands, still gripping the shards of the broken pot, unable to comprehend what she had just done. The young woman rushed to Derek's side, frantically checking for signs of life, while fumbling for her phone to call 911. Evelyn stumbled backward, her designer heels crunching on scattered dirt and broken ceramic. The world seemed to spin around her as the gravity of the situation set in. She had come here for confrontation, for answers, but in a moment of blind fury, she had potentially ended a life. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Evelyn knew she should stay, face the consequences of her actions, but panic overwhelmed her rational thoughts. As Evelyn sped away in her luxury car, her mind raced. What had she done? How had her life unraveled so completely in the span of a few hours? The familiar streets of Seacliff Cove blurred past her windows, no longer a comfort, but a reminder of everything she stood to lose. Back at her villa, Evelyn paced frantically, her blood-stained dress a stark reminder of the evening's events. She jumped at every sound, expecting police sirens or a knock at the door. In her panic, she did the only thing she could think of. She called her children. Alexander and Sophia arrived within minutes, their faces etched with worry. Evelyn, her composure finally cracking, broke down and confessed everything. The confrontation, the fight, the moment of madness with the pot. It all came pouring out between sobs. Sophia held her mother as she wept, while Alexander, ever the pragmatist, began to formulate a plan. "We need to call our lawyer," he said firmly, "right now, before the police get here." As if on cue, the sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder as they approached the Blackwood estate. Evelyn felt her world closing in around her, the carefully constructed facade of her life crumbling to dust. The next few hours passed in a blur of police questioning, lawyer consultations, and hushed family discussions. Derek, it turned out, had survived the attack but was in critical condition at Seacliff General Hospital. His fiancée had given a full statement to the police, painting Evelyn as a jilted, unstable older woman who had attacked them in a jealous rage. As dawn broke over Seacliff Cove, casting a pale light over the opulent homes and manicured lawns, Evelyn Blackwood found herself facing the unthinkable arrest and charges of attempted murder. The scandal rocked the tight-knit community. Whispers and rumors spread like wildfire through country club lounges and beachfront cafes. The woman, who had once been the epitome of grace and sophistication, was now the subject of lurid gossip and speculation. In the months that followed, Evelyn's life became a whirlwind of legal proceedings, tabloid exposés, and personal recriminations. Derek, having recovered from his injuries, pressed charges and filed a civil suit, seeking millions in damages. His true nature as a con artist came to light during the investigation, but it did little to mitigate Evelyn's actions in the eyes of the law. The trial was a media sensation, drawing attention far beyond the borders of Seacliff Cove. Every detail of Evelyn and Derek's affair was dissected in court and in the press. Evelyn's children stood by her, testifying to Derek's manipulations and their mother's previously unblemished character. In the end, Evelyn was found guilty of aggravated assault, but acquitted of attempted murder. The judge, taking into account her clean record and the circumstances surrounding the attack, sentenced her to 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. As Evelyn was led away from the courtroom, her Chanel suit exchanged for prison garb, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in a window. The face that looked back at her was one she barely recognized. Older, wearier, stripped of the carefully maintained veneer of perfection she had hidden behind for so long. In the quiet of her cell that first night, Evelyn reflected on the choices that had led her to this point. The loneliness that had made her vulnerable to Derek's charms, the pride that had blinded her to the red flags, the rage that had ultimately been her undoing. She realized that in trying to recapture her youth, she had lost sight of the strength and wisdom that came with age. As for Seacliff Cove, life went on. The scandal faded from the headlines, replaced by new dramas and intrigues. But the tale of Evelyn Blackwood served as a cautionary story, whispered about at dinner parties and social gatherings, a reminder that beneath the polished surface of even the most seemingly perfect life, dangerous currents could lurk. In the end, Evelyn's story was one of passion, betrayal, and the high price of desire. It served as a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous storms are the ones that brew within our own hearts.